Hello, everyone. Welcome back. So, I've heard some great news. House Republicans are going to start impeachment hearings next week on Judge Bozo. Okay. Now, I don't think it's enough for them to just start these hearings on Bozo. They need to do this with all these other judges that are trying to basically hamper Trump's agenda. Okay. And here's the thing: they're not going to remove them from their position, right? Because first the hearings are just that. They're just hearings in the Judiciary Committee, and if at some point if that gets voted out, then it would go to the House floor, where if they got a majority, then it would go to the Senate, where they would try him, right? So the impeachment is just an indictment, okay? So. But it's very unlikely that the Republicans would be successful in the Senate to actually remove this judge from his position, because first of all the Republicans would need to agree to this, right? And then on top of that, they would have to convince another 14 Democrats to vote with them, which is not going to happen. So there's a zero chance of removing this judge from office. But what they can do, okay, is they can get this judge. If they can get this judge out of his court, and all those other judges around the country that are hampering Trump's agenda, get them out of their courts and get them over to the Congress, right? All of them at once, right? So that they can basically keep them busy, right? And that's the reason why I say get them all there at once, where you got them there all day, sitting there waiting for the turn, and especially if these House members are going back and forth between different ones, asking them questions, because I don't think they're going to be able to get much else done in the House now anyway, right? What else do they have? I don't think they have anything better to do, right? So at the very least, if they get them in these hearings, okay, and get them out of their courts, right, for entire days, that will prevent them from conducting these court trials that they're doing, where they're slowing down Trump. Okay, so the goal that I see here is not so much to remove them from their positions, but to keep them busy, right? Because and ideally, what they want to do is every time these judges schedule a Trump hearing, that's the day and time that you require that they be in the Congress, okay, to give testimony in these hearings, because they can't be in two places at once. Okay, so that's something that makes a lot of sense, and this is all political. Okay, so you might say, hey, this is messing with the system. The system's already messed up. Okay, because these are activist judges that are working specifically to try and prevent. Prevent the Trump agenda, but to slow it down, because the goal of the Democrats here, right, is basically to run out the clock, okay? Because what they're trying to do is they're trying to get to the midterms. They want to stop things from happening, right, and get to the midterms, where hopefully they're thinking, hey, if they can win one of the houses in the Congress, right, either the House or the Senate, they can win one of the chambers. Then basically what they can do is now they got even a better chance of stopping or really slowing down the Trump agenda to getting to the 2028 election. So for the Democrats, their strategy is run out the clock. Okay, so Trump's strategy needs to be to counter that. Okay, he needs to prevent the Democrats from running out the clock, from slowing him down. And the way to do this, okay, is to get these judges, right? Because that's the tool that the Democrats are using right now. They're using these judges to try and slow down the Trump agenda. They got to get these judges out of their courts, okay, and get them into the House Judiciary Committee and keep them there, right? So that they are too busy to be ruling against Trump. Okay, so that's a strategy that makes sense. Okay. It's obviously not the best way for the government to work, but given what the Democrats are doing, okay, this is the best thing to do to counter them. Okay, and right now they're doing it with Judge Bozo, but I don't think it's enough to just target him. They need to target all of them at once, get them all. If there's, let's say, 5 or 6 judges out there, the ones that are pushing back against the U.S. Because Trump is trying to trim down a lot of these agencies like USAID and Department of Education. There's probably another 1 or 2 out there. So if he can get these judges out of their courtrooms and in the House Judiciary Committee, they can't be in 2 places at once. Okay, so that's a counter strategy that makes sense and would actually work. And I suspect, okay, that Republicans are at least as smart as me, right? And that's what they're doing. Okay, but from what I heard, they're just doing Bozo right now, Judge Bozo. They need to get the rest of them there, because if you've got 5 or 6 of them and you're taking turns between all of them, right? If you got them all at the same time, and you're taking, because now they're spending a lot of time just sitting there waiting for their turn, that just keeps them busy for even longer. Okay, and hopefully that'll frustrate them, and behind closed doors they'll agree to stop interfering. Okay, now Chief Justice John Roberts says that he doesn't like this, but that's too bad. Okay, now, I think that the Trump administration is kind of like weighing back and forth here between not pissing off the Supreme Court, right? Because they're thinking that, hey, maybe if we don't piss them off, maybe they'll help us out, right? And on the other hand, they're thinking, you know what, this Supreme Court is just not on our side, and we should just go all out against it. Okay, so my feeling is that the John Roberts Supreme Court right now is not going to help Trump in any way. Okay, if they give him a small victory, that's just like a teaser to kind of keep him on the line. Keep him biting, keep him occupied, right? Keep him going back to the Supreme Court, hoping that he'll get another victory, right? So I think that they need to completely abandon trying to appease the Supreme Court and just accept the fact that the Supreme Court has no enforcement power, and they can pull contempt out of their asses all they want. It means nothing. Okay, so the way it works is you got 3 branches of government. Okay, so you got Congress, executive branch, the judicial branch. Okay, these are all co-equal branches of government. So no one branch can dominate any of the other branches. But if you can get 2 branches, okay, to gang up on one branch, then they, they can definitely, to some extent, control it, keep it at bay, shut it down. So the Congress, right? The job of the Congress is to make laws, but one of those laws is basically to pass budgets, right? So that's the power of the purse. Okay, so even though their job is to make law, their power, okay, is the power of the purse. They can control, or they can exert influence on the other 2 branches by cutting off their funding. Okay, so that's the power of the Congress. They have the power of the purse. Okay, the executive branch has the guns. Okay, that's their power, right? They got the army. They got they got enforcement abilities. Okay, so the Congress can control the executive branch by defunding it, basically. Okay, so that's how the Congress can really control the executive branch. Executive branch can basically, to some extent, control the Congress by refusing to do the things that the Congress would like done. Okay, so that's the balance between the Congress and the executive branch. Okay, now the judicial branch, right, which is the 3rd branch of government here. They're basically the translators, okay? Because a lot of times people say, okay, they get to interpret law. Okay, well, what does that mean? They get to interpret law. Well, they get to translate the meaning of the Constitution and the laws that Congress passes. Okay, so but the judicial branch, right? They don't have any enforcement powers. Okay, and they should not, right? Because if they do, if they're basically judge, if they have the ability to judge and also enforce, then they could very easily become the king. Okay, so that's why the judicial branch, because the judicial branch, if it had enforcement powers, if it had an army behind it, would very easily overpower the other 2 branches. Okay, so that's why judicial branch was not given any enforcement powers, and it is kept the smallest. Okay, so it cannot dominate the other two because it could. If it had enforcement powers, it could very easily dominate the other two and just kick them out and basically become the monarchy. Okay, so that's why the judicial branch depends on the Congress for money. Okay, and they depend on the executive branch to enforce its decisions. Okay, and if Congress doesn't want to give them money, and if the executive branch doesn't want to give them muscle, right? They've got no power. Okay, so right now, with what's going on here, with the way that the threat that the judicial branch has against the Trump administration is that if they're going to hold them in contempt of court. Okay, so I mean, if we go to court, right, and let's say we give the judge the middle finger, right, okay, and he says contempt of court, you're in contempt of court. Basically, we go to jail, okay. So they can do bad stuff to us, but they can't do that to the executive branch, right? Because the executive branch has the guns and they don't, okay. So they can't do that. So the president, right, or the executive branch is in a position to give the judiciary branch the middle finger, okay, and they can't do anything about it, okay. So I think that Trump needs to, or Trump and his administration, right, and all of his secretaries, right, because to some extent, once they're appointed, they're supposed to enact the president's agenda, but sometimes they can decide to do other things. What they need, and that's also the reason. Now, there's a reason why Trump said that he's not the one that signed the deportation order, and I'll get to that in a minute. Okay. And that's going to come back to the Democrat strategy here. Okay. Well, actually, let's kind of jump into it. So the idea here is why are they trying to find Trump in contempt of court, right? Because that's what this judge is maneuvering here, right? He's trying to get as much information, right? Judge Bozo is trying to get as much information he's essentially trying to get the Trump administration to self-incriminate themselves, right? So that he can slap them with a contempt of court order, okay? Which again, against us, it means we go to jail, right? Because they would get the executive branch to basically haul our asses off the jail. But they're not going to do that. Like the executive branch is not going to haul itself off the jail, okay? So what are they trying to do here? They're trying to collect information, right? So that this judge can pronounce hopefully they're trying to get Trump on this, right? And they were hoping that Trump is the one that signed the executive order to move those what are they called? Those Terroragua gang members, terror gang members. I'm just going to call them that. They were hoping that he was the one that signed the executive order because what they're hoping to do is specifically hold Trump in contempt of court, okay? But instead, from what I heard, it was the Secretary of State, Mark Rubio, that actually signed the order. So what Democrats are looking for here, because they're fishing for something, okay? What they're hoping is that they're hoping to get a contempt of court judgment, right, from this Judge Bozo here, so that if the Democrats are successful, okay, in the midterms, okay, now they have this contempt of court order, which now they're going to use that to basically run Trump through a third impeachment. Okay, so that's what they're trying to get out of all this. Okay, they're trying to create a speed bump. Okay, but on top of that, they're trying to create a speed bump now. But more importantly, what they're also trying to do is they're thinking ahead. They're trying to create a speed bump in the last 2 years after the midterms, where if the Democrats get the House back, okay, what they're hoping to do is that they'll have this contempt of court order sitting there, so they can use that to start a third impeachment hearing on Trump, with the purpose of tying him up for his last 2 years. Okay, so that's the Democrat play here. They're just trying to run out the clock. They're trying to gather up as much ammunition as they can to that extent. That's their play. That's their only play, and there's nothing else that they can do. Okay, so it makes sense to me, like, given all this information, Trump needs to go like all out on this, right? his administration has to go all out on this. Forget this threat of contempt of court, right? He needs to just start deporting. Now, one of the good things that has happened, right, with these 200 or so gang members that they deported to El Salvador, and this is part of the play. I mean, I don't think it was part of the original plan, but I think that they're seeing the benefits of it. Every day that this thing is dragging out in the news, okay, what are all these people that are here illegally hearing? Okay, that Trump is breaking the rules, rounding up people and sending them to a torture camp, to a slave camp in El Salvador. Okay, so the benefit of that, okay, is that a lot of people are going to self-deport, right? Because put yourself in their shoes, right? You're in the country, you don't speak the language, you really don't know what the rules are, and but they do talk amongst each other, right? And if they're hearing that Trump is rounding up people and sending them to torture camps, okay, that's real motivation for them to get out of the country. Okay, so from our side, the play here is not so much that we got the 200 gang members out, right? Because that's a small, controllable amount. The real play here is that it's created an incentive for the other 20 to 30 million that have come into the country illegally for them to self-deport, okay? Because that's the real important thing, right? Because the Democrats imported all these people because they're basically importing voters, right? They're importing people that will vote for them, okay? So that's their play. So they got like 20 or 30 million people, okay? So the question is, how do we get those 20 or 30 million people out? What's the incentive that we provide for them, okay? Going around, ICE going around and like picking them up one by one, that's hard, man. That's gonna take forever, okay? The fastest, quickest way to get them out is for them to leave on their own out of fear that they might end up in a torture camp, okay? So that's how this is. I mean, this is how things have. This is what how this thing has evolved to, right? I don't know if it was planned that way, but this is what we got, and it makes sense to make use of it, okay? So that's probably the best way to get 20 to 30 million people out of the country that don't belong here. Keep this in the news as long as possible, right? And the Democrats kind of helping us with that, so that these people will self-deport, okay? So this kind of, but as part of that process, they need to get these hearings going, right? Because number one, to slow down this judge, right, and all these other judges, and also keep it in the news longer, okay? And also, once they get them into these hearings, a lot of these illegals that are here, like, oh my God, now the judges are, because they don't know. Remember, they're not familiar with the country, so they might be thinking, oh shit, now these judges are going to lose their jobs, and they're going to send us off to these torture camps. Okay, so they're going to get out of the country even faster. Okay, so that's an important play here. Now, one of the things to also keep your eye on, right, and be aware of is what's going on with John Roberts, right, in the Supreme Court. It's a power play, right, because the judicial branch, right, which is the smallest branch, is very jealous, okay, of the power of the other two branches. Okay, so anything that the judicial branch can do to weaken the other two branches and take power onto itself, it's going to do. Okay, so it's looking at this situation now as it exists, right, and they're looking for an opportunity to weaken the executive branch and empower themselves. Okay, so just that's the way that John Roberts is looking at this. At the point where they get on the Supreme Court and they're at that level, they may have gone in as Democrat or Republican, right? But at that level, they're on Team Judiciary Branch. Okay, so when John Roberts looks at like these lower court judges, right? He kind of sees them as his foot soldiers. Okay, so some he likes more than others, right? Some are, but the point is that they're all his people. Okay, so he's going to do everything that he can to use those foot soldiers in the lower courts to try and gain more power for his branch of government that he is the head of, right? The judicial branch. So that's the place of the Supreme Court here, and I think that Trump and his administration need to realize that and understand that they're not going to get any help from the Supreme Court. Okay, that's like the Supreme Court is 100% working against them, and their sole motivation in all this is how Supreme Court is going to get more power for itself. So they need to just accept that and essentially just run over these courts, ignore them, let them hit them with all the contempt charges they want. They don't mean anything. Okay. Again, the reason why the Democrats are interested in getting these contempt charges is because if they win the midterms, they're going to try. To them, it's just something that they'll be able to use to try and impeach Trump, right? Which they will. I mean, if they win the House, they're going to impeach him a third time. Okay, that's a given. That's I mean, you got to accept that. Now, how can Trump prevent the Democrats from winning the winning the House, winning back the Senate? How can he prevent that? I believe that he has an ace up his sleeve, right? Which he has floated the idea. He has said that he wants to eliminate the income tax for anybody making below $150,000. Okay, so the whole play of the Democrats, right, as far as trying to win over the middle class, is that that Trump is for the rich. All right, so if Trump comes out there and says, you know what, everybody below $150,000, you don't pay any income tax. Okay, that completely takes away the argument that the Democrats have that Trump is trying to is working on behalf of his billionaire buddies, right? So he completely eliminates that argument, and he did that very successfully with the whole abortion thing too, right? Because he said that he was comfortable with this thing being back in states, and he was not going to sign any abortion or anti-abortion laws, which was a good play on his part, because that took away that argument from the Democrats. I mean, they still said it, but to the middle class people, to the suburban women, now all of a sudden that became less of an issue. Okay, so he took that away from them. So now what he needs to do is he needs to take away the billionaire buddies argument that the Democrats have, get rid of the income tax, right, for anybody below $150,000, and that's how he keeps control of the Congress after in the midterm elections. Okay, so I think that's his play there. Okay, so a couple of things for you guys to think about. Let me know what you guys think. I'll talk to y'all soon.